How can I care about the human across from me? And how can I really focus on this idea that they deserve dignity and respect, and I'm going to pause to focus on those aspects. I'm not going to do it from a check-a-box perspective. I'm not just going to do it from the perspective of I need to get a yes, because I get yes means yes and no means no, and we have to have an enthusiastic yes. I also understand from the human perspective, sometimes people are in situations where they say yeah, non-verbally, I didn't stop and slow down and we both wanted it. And when you're talking to 16-year-olds, that potentially is the case, where they had consent, and they didn't stop, and they didn't seek it out, and they both knew they wanted to, and they never stopped. And that can happen 9 times out of 10, and the one time it doesn't happen, it changes someone's life, and it causes irreparable harm. I think sometimes it's just that ability to say, if your children or your students have come to you with questions, and they ask these things, they don't know the answer, I think sometimes it's okay to say, I actually don't know that. And that's a really good piece of information. And I think the other side of that is knowing that this generation has so much access to information and sometimes has this keen knowledge about these issues, is letting them educate you, right? I get it, I don't have kids, but believe me, when I have a 16-year-old in a session telling me something or correcting me, my initial reaction is, I've researched this for 8 years, who are you? But the bigger piece of me is probably to sit down and say, what can I learn from this? A great question to ask always is, why do you believe that? Or what makes you think that, or things like that. Just trying to get to the root of what people believe. Because I think sometimes these values we're taught, or that we're taught to hold, when we can get to the root of them, we can try and figure out what is potentially harmful, problematic, or toxic about it, and we can try and help people replace them with other values, or help them recognize you're not a bad person. Potentially it's the system you're a part of, potentially it's what you've been taught is normal, or you're doing this because you think it's achieving X. It might actually be achieving Y, so let's change the behavior, right? The value of what you're trying to do isn't bad, the implementation of it's bad, so let's try and change that and focus on how we can still allow that value to carry through. The responsibility we have, I think oftentimes, is thinking about the spaces we're creating, the ways we're cultivating these conversations, the ways we're normalizing these conversations, the ways we're helping these individuals who have responsibility for to say, how are you thinking about your boundaries? How are you thinking about your identities? How are you exploring these aspects? How are you doing that? I think we have to provoke them. We have to have that conversation. I would say it's not that teenagers don't want to talk about this, it's that oftentimes they don't have a space to talk about it. And I think in the home environment, or in the familiar environment, or in the school environment, or whatever environment you're responsible for, there's the potential to create that space.